We are live. Hello and welcome to Monday, March 21st episode of Blind Eye Live. The first week of NFL Free Agency is in the books. I gave some thoughts on some winners and losers on Friday, but I thought I'd go back over that because I've had a few more thoughts on some of the teams. I wanted to kind of do some post-free agency thoughts because there were some teams I wasn't even thinking about because they didn't make any moves. They're obviously waiting for the second kind of wave of free agency. They're waiting for teams. They're waiting for the teams with money to spend it, and then take what's left, and they're going bargain hunting. And I totally respect that strategy this year. I think there's some teams that are taking this as, we're going to see how good we are with what we got, but we're going to have way more money to work with next year. So why the heck would we not? Or why the heck would we spend a bunch of money now when it would be more prudent to spend it when we have more of it? Not to mention, there's a lot of guys who are sitting with the thought, or a lot of free agents are sitting with the thought of, well, if we're not going to get a multi-year deal that we would have been okay with in a normal year, or close to it, we're just going to take the 1 year deal and bet on ourselves and get to next year where, with so many contracts trimmed off the books this year for certain teams, if the cap jumps, we have to remember that the cap, when it dropped somewhat artificially. So at minimum, we should jump back up to at least, I would say at least, to projected revenue levels for last year, this next year, or close to it. It's possible, though, especially with the new rights deal that the NFL has just signed, although it doesn't necessarily go into effect this year, I don't think. But if we've got fans back, and I think by the fall, every team will be back at 100% capacity, except maybe the teams in California, because California's politicians are idiots and hate the people that live there. And I would say they legitimately do, because otherwise why would you enact the policies you do on your populace? Not going to get too much deeper into politics, but people killing their economy, that's their business, I guess. And I guess if you voted for it, I mean, you get what you vote for. But yeah, I would say that most, if not all, the NFL teams will be at 100% capacity by fall. Sorry, I need a little bit of a drink here. Gatorade, not sponsored. But yeah, so we're going to get into winners and losers. I've also got some March Madness thoughts. Although I have watched less games this year than I have in years prior. I guess, well, obviously I watched less last year because it didn't happen, but my opinion of college basketball is this. It can be great when the refs don't ruin it. And unfortunately, the refs ruin nearly every game I watch. I've just gotten tired of it. And the refs are about to ruin the NBA. So, but other than the refs, there's also this big thing where there's a few schools that are really fun to watch because they play basketball and they optimize their offense and everything to play better basketball and, make the lives of the players easier. And then you have most schools that are coached by morons like Rick Barnes, who, for whatever reason, decide, I'm going to stick a guy on the left side of the lane and the right side of the lane, and then I'm going to have my guards just pass the ball back and forth until one of them has to drive at the basket into 3 defenders and their own guys who are taking up space. And that's 85 to 90% of possessions every game. Like, you have, like, the Bruce Pearls of the world who, he's updated his offense some, but, I like Bruce Pearl. I liked him when he was at Tennessee. He's been really good for Auburn. They run an offense. There are sets that do things, that create space. You look at Alabama. Their Coach Oates comes from Jay Wright, Villanova. He was an assistant on that staff. Villanova runs an amazing, beautiful, modern offense. They spread the floor. A few years ago, Wright had that 5-out team with DiVincenzo was on the team. I believe Hart was still on the team at the time. Well, it was like DiVincenzo, Hart, Brunson, Michael Bridges, Eric Pashaw, and Amari Spillman. I think we're all on the team at the same time. I might have some of that wrong, but all of those guys were basically on that same team in like a 2-year period, 3-year period. Most of them played with each other. When you go when your 6-7 best players all can shoot threes, and you've got a guy like guys like Spellman and Pashaw, because at the college level even Pashaw can play center, but like Spellman was a really good center, like athletic, could hit threes. Like when he pops, they leave him open and he hits shots. Or Spellman had I want to say had a little bit of a pump and go game, or he'd pass back and then he'd dart past the closing out player. But anyway, the point is, there's all this space to attack the basket. Alabama, they run sets where they run a pick and roll with what's his name, Quinterly. I think it's Quinterly or Quinn Early, something like that, and one of their bigs, Reese. And there's no one inside the 3-point arc, and you either have to double Quinterly or he's getting the basket or getting an easy layup. Because for him, if it's just one guy contesting or 2 guys, and he can still, it's like his finishing ability is incredible. He had a layup against Iona where he went baseline with 2 guys, and he just made this Kyrie Irving-esque like scooping finish from like under the basket, like reverse off the backboard. It was beautiful. That guy was just attacking and hitting every layup. And if it wasn't for the refs deciding to call stupid on the floor fouls instead of just letting the possession go for like another second before blowing the whistle, like a lot of NBA refs will do, which I think is totally fine. I think even if infraction happens, but if there's an active scoring chance, don't bail out the defense by, blowing the whistle and, forcing the team to inbound the ball again, or heaven forbid, that's the worst. And then it's still bad though when it's like you're in the bonus and it's like, oh, I get a 1-and-1, so you're gonna take off like what a lot of times is an easy layup to force me to do this, and it's for something off the ball that didn't even affect the play really. I think that's stupid. And that happened multiple times to Bama against Iona, and Bama still smoked them in the second half. But there were multiple times where this would happen. But what would happen is if they doubled Quinterly, and sometimes he could even split, it was too late and he'd already be past the first guy. He'd just pitch it back to Reese who had just set the screen for him, who had popped like to the top of the arc, and he just drilled threes. He hit 2 of them in like 3 possessions. He had like 2 attempts of those, and it's just like boom, boom. And there's not much you can do against that, or against a team who has a guy who can play legitimately defend the center position but can also pop and just drill threes at, will on the offensive end. So, and that's why Alabama is a 2 seed, which they have really good talent too, obviously. But you take a team like Tennessee, who has multiple draftable players this year. Keon Johnson is he's going to go in the top 7 picks. The guy is a freaky athlete, has immense defensive upside. He plays really hard. Like, the effort and the work ethic seem to be 110% for that guy. And he had some plays where, like, I think he's going to end up being a really good post player against, like, guards. I think at the NBA level, I think he could be a really interesting weapon, because I think what we're finding is finding smart ways to use post ups, getting mismatches, like physical mismatches. Post ups are still extremely useful. You don't build your offense around them, but they're a nice weapon. I think Keon Johnson could have that. But you have him. You have Springer, who's a interesting, like, combo guard type, who a lot of people had it, like, or a lot of people have around, like, the back end of the first round, early second. Josiah Jordan-James, who a lot of people thought was going to be one and done, and then he had kind of a rough freshman year. That's Barnes' fault. I'd say he's still very much like a guy with great potential. He's still so young. I think he'd be a really good get in the second round, or even the late first. You've got Ives Pons, who is a beast of a shot blocker and defensive player, who has also started, like, nailing catch and shoot shots. Like, he's been a little streaky this year, but he's had some games where he's, like, just nailing corner threes. And this guy can, like, elevate to block any shot he wants, and has, like, that LeBron James or peak Andre Iguodala, like, chase down, or Josh Howard. I remember peak Josh Howard had that too, like, just the chase down blocks. Pons has got it, man. And there's a couple other, like, really talented guys on the Tennessee roster. Like, problem is we didn't have a Kemba Walker type, Shabazz Napier type. I go to them because they're two of, like, the most dominant guard performances I can think of in NCAA tournament history. You have to have great guard play. You have to have a Steph, or, like, you have to have that kind of creativity, like creative ball handling, to win the title. It just is what it is. You could have you could have the best center, power forward, and small forward in the country. If you don't have above average guard play, it can absolutely neuter it. And when I say guard play, like, Keon Johnson's technically a guard, but, like, you need a creator who can set people up. And now that can be a forward, but you have to have that. You have to have someone who can break the defense down. He doesn't necessarily have to be the elite finisher, but you have to have a guy who can break defenses down when the offense doesn't work, and devastate defenses when the offense does work. So that was one thing that limited Tennessee, but you can mitigate some of that by having a great offensive system, because it lowers the bar for what kind of creativity you need from that lead playmaker. Sorry, I'm going to adjust my camera. And sorry I'm a little later today. I think I ended up being about 18 minutes late. I was having some issues with my camera that I was sorting out. Like, for whatever reason, it was just not showing up. And then I was able to go in somewhere, and I clicked the button, clicked it again, and it worked. And I'm just like, I felt so stupid. But then again, it's like, there's no one telling me how to do this, so I'm just learning as I go. So, anyway, back to crapping all over Rick Barnes. Rick Barnes is a great recruiter, and he can coach pretty good defense, except he hasn't evolved any from the guy who couldn't get past the second round of the NCAA tournament with Kevin Durant. I repeat, Rick Barnes couldn't get past the second round of the NCAA tournament with Kevin Durant. How does that work? How does that work out to you being a good coach? Yeah, I mean, one guy does not a full team make, but in basketball, one elite player can carry a team to the NCAA Final Four, if not a championship appearance. Like, UConn had some really good teams, but Kemba Walker and Shabazz Napier dominated on their way to leading UConn to those deep runs. Dominated. Stephen Curry dragged Davidson deep into the NCAA tournament. And Davidson had nothing outside of Steph Curry. Nothing. Jimmer Fredette had BYU dropping bombs on everyone. Jimmer Fredette was nothing in the pros. Or at least at the NBA level, should I say. You had Kevin Durant, who was having a historic freshman season. Couldn't get past the second round. And they had talent on that Texas team beyond Durant. I mean, Tennessee basketball is the best it's been since Bruce Pearl left, because Rick Barnes is still not as bad as Quanzo Martin, who somehow keeps getting high-profile jobs. Don't ask me how. This man at Cal had Jaylen Brown and another top prospect, Ivan Rabb, on his team. I believe he was the coach of Cal at the time, because Tennessee had dismissed him at that point. I believe it was like right after. But Jaylen Brown and Ivan Rabb, that team stunk. It stunk because he wasn't using players properly. Now, Jaylen Brown has turned into, at the NBA level, a great, like, shooting guard, small forward type. But in college, he didn't have the ball handling ability he does right now. He definitely didn't have the outside shooting. And Cal was playing him as a 2-guard, 3-guard. Or, I mean, 2-guard, small forward. Usually small forward, but there were sometimes rolling out lineups that had Rabb and a true center on the court, because Rabb was considered a power forward. Although he was kind of a big one. He legitimately should have been playing center. But Quanzo Martin just wastes people. I believe he was the coach at Washington when Markelle Fultz was there, or he replaced him. It was something like that. I can't remember. It's because it's not like I followed Quanzo Martin's entire career, but I know he's made stops in all these different places. And he also went to Missouri. He got the Porter brothers, like Michael Porter and Jonte Porter, to Missouri. But anyway, Quanzo Martin, he sits, because I remember when he was at Tennessee, you had Jarnell Stokes on one block, you had whoever the other power forward was on the other block, and you had your point guard, shooting guard, and small forward stationed between the right and left edges of the arc where it flattens out. So they're all at points on the top of the arc, just passing the ball back and forth until maybe they decide to throw it to one of the bigs, or they jack up a terrible shot. And that's basically Rick Barnes runs a little bit more movement version system of that. And then sometimes he actually breaks out a play that pulls one of those guys away from the lane. The problem is it's usually this same single set, and sometimes we'll run it like 7 times in a row. To the point that the defense could close their eyes and take a nap and just sleepwalk around the court and they'll stop it. Rick Barnes is bad. And then on defense, Rick Barnes, if you can hit a 3-point shot, you can beat a Rick Barnes team because he will make sure his defenders don't guard a single guy beyond the 3-point arc. Which is how we've lost most of our games this year. Like, Alabama beat us because they can shoot. We lost our game in the tournament because our opponent could shoot. And I really don't understand like how some of these schools, which maybe, these coaches are getting paid well, they really like the school so they don't want to leave, but I don't know how Loyola's coach is still at Loyola at this point. I also don't know how Loyola ended up a 16 seed in this tournament when they had a 28-4 record and Illinois had a 24-7 record, but Illinois was somehow a 1 seed. Whoever put this bracket together should be lined up against a wall because they're terrible. Lined up against a wall and tomatoes should be hurled at them. Because obviously people don't deserve to be lined up against the wall the way that most people would use that meme over like college basketball. That would be retarded, people. Calm down. But yeah, whoever put this bracket together should never be allowed to do it again. Like, Michigan State never should have made the tournament. 15-12. Give me a break. And then they blow that 11-point lead because Tom Izzo, I think I mentioned it, on Friday. Like, Tom Izzo basically tries or assaults one of his own players on the sideline. His best player, basically. And then that guy can't hit a shot for the rest of the game. It's like, you get what you deserve. And Tom Izzo deserves to lose for the way he has these just childish outbursts on the sidelines at this point. I don't care what Draymond Green and other former Michigan State players say about him. Like, at this point, Tom Izzo doesn't know how to act professionally on the sideline. It's happening every year now that he has these outbursts. And it hurts his team in those games. And as far as I'm concerned, it's a bad representation of his university. I wouldn't want that guy on the sidelines. That's why one of the reasons I was so glad the Tennessee Vols fired Butch Jones finally. He was a joke of a person on the sideline. He was an insult. He was an insult to the fans as a representative of the school at the University of Tennessee. And the SEC, and of just college football in general. Yes, coaches have outbursts and stuff, but like Saban will get upset. But Butch Jones spent about 25 to 50% of every game cussing out his players, his coaches, and the referees in red-faced tirades. To the point where, like, my dad, who is somewhat hearing impaired, and part of the way he understands people is he's gotten really good at, like, reading lips, along with, like, the kind of garbled sound that he hears. And he's watching, he's like, he doesn't even have to hear what Butch Jones is saying. He knows exactly what he's saying, like, when they're cutting to him while he's yelling at these refs. And he's like, and it honestly just about drove Dad away from the program, because he just got tired of seeing it. Man, at this rate, I'm going to have to grab another one of these at the hour mark. So, but anyway, I think that's enough of crapping on Rick Barnes as a coach. There are a lot of bad coaches out there. I would say at this point, like, I know he just won a title a few years ago. Actually, at this point, I think it's been about 5 years or so. But I think this time Roy Williams is literally done, or should be. I think Coach K should be done. The way he complained and whined about this year, if you don't want to deal with the risks of enabling your players to play basketball, what they what the top guys at your program came to do, as especially as a college coach. And to me, as someone who has as someone who's done a little bit of teaching work in my time, and helped do some stuff with special needs individuals, because I'm also a former special needs student. The role of teachers, professors, and really as public servants as a whole, which these coaches, they are public employees, like they're state employees if they're at state schools. I know Duke is a private school, but still, it is your responsibility to put the well-being and the, not just the well-being, but the wants and needs of your students before your own. Like, you are supposed to be enabling them, like you are helping them to become a better version of themselves, a more actualized version of the person they want to be. Now, they have to, obviously those students have to also put out effort. But I put in all this work to play basketball at a high level and potentially make that a career. And I have accepted a scholarship to your program. And you're going to tell me, and you're going to go out in the media and you're going to say, we shouldn't even be having a season. As far as I'm concerned, if the players want to play, it's your job, and it's the job of the people making or who organize all this stuff. It's their job to serve the players at the college level. I'm not just saying that like at professional levels, but because I think there's a difference there. But these are young adults. They're student athletes, but they're adults. And you can make an argument for people under the age of 18, like high school, middle school athletes, whatever. But at the college level, these are adults. They should be allowed to take on whatever risk they deem reasonable. So if the players want to play, the players should play. And luckily, we were able to play this season. And I actually think that the rules they've set up for the NCAA tournament, it's like, yeah, it sucks that VCU had to forfeit their game. It kind of sucks that, Oregon is getting to advance without playing a game. But this is the best we can do, and we should be taking some kind of measures with like the COVID stuff. Like, I think some things have been insane. But we are trying to have an athletic competition, and we can't have an athletic competition if everyone gets sick. So, I think what they're doing with the tournament is good, rather than just not having it like last year. Although at the time this had just started, I totally understood why they canceled it. Because this time last year when this was first starting, and I was following it from before we really had an outbreak in the U.S., like when everything was still really over in China, I really thought that COVID was going to be crazy. I really was expecting like it to be worse than it's been, based on the information I was seeing. And it got to the States, and it wasn't nearly as bad as I thought. It wasn't nearly as bad as what the media was saying, which is funny because when I was worried about it originally, the media was downplaying it and saying Trump was crazy because he was the president at the time, that Trump was crazy for considering shutting down travel from China and potentially shutting down travel for a bit to keep it from getting into the country. With all the hysteria since, it's kind of funny that we just forget about that. But that's just how we are nowadays, I guess. We just don't remember things, we forget things, or we missed it. We don't pay attention to things. Like, it's really weird. Anyway, not to get on a whole political thing, because, this is really in a political show, and Um, what side you fall on it, depending on like what information you've seen and where you tend to lean, that's fine. I'm not going to judge, because I'm a very individualist-based person. You do what you feel you need to do. But I do think that the NCAA has done or in having the tournament this year, I think they're doing a good job. Me complimenting the NCAA. You may only hear this the one time, because there's not much more for me to say good about them, because I'm pretty anti-NCAA. But at least we're having a tournament, guys. Anyway, I would say, like, with all the games that have been played so far, I thought it was a joke. To get back to, like, I mentioned Illinois Loyola and how much I wish Loyola's coach was Tennessee's coach. They have a great offense. They were just raining fire. I can't remember the dude's name right now, but that big white dude, I think it was 13, with like the peach fuzz mustache. It's like he's a 13-year-old. I might have had the number wrong, but that dude, he was dropping. He was just. It was like he had a flamethrower attached to his arm. He was burning up the nets. But I thought it was a joke. Illinois was a 1 seed. They're 24-7. Like, and I thought outside of Michigan, I thought most of the Big Ten teams were kind of overrated. Like, Ohio State was a 2 seed, I think it was, and they lost to Oral Roberts in overtime. And I thought Ohio State was overrated. I thought Illinois was severely overrated. Michigan State shouldn't even been in the tournament. But then again, I guess they had some teams that were going to be in the tournament couldn't take part because of COVID stuff, and maybe that's how Michigan State got in. But I feel like there were probably some mid-major schools with better records that we should have just given them a shot. Come on, it's Michigan State. If they're not better than 15-12, they don't deserve to be anywhere near the tournament. It's like you're an elite program. You should have to clear you should have to clear at least 20 wins to get in the tournament. Or should I say, in a regular season, I would say like that record probably would have been. Because like I get annoyed when I see teams that are like 18-13 or like 19-11 getting in the tournament. Because I'm sitting here like there are teams with like 24-25 wins in the mid majors that don't get in the tournament. And I'm like, that's a joke. A bad joke when that happens, in my opinion. And sometimes it depends. Like, you had a team that lost a lot of early games to like really good teams, and maybe they had a player out injured. I could get some of like those strength arguments, because I think some of the times I've seen 19-11 teams. I think one time it was like a Louisville team, and that team was actually pretty decent. I think they won their first round matchup, but I remember it was egregious a few years back. There was like a team that was like 16-11 or 17-13, or it was like it was a really bad. It was like a record where I was just like, how did you get in the tournament? Yeah, I think they were 17-13. I was just like, there's like 300 something teams in Division I college basketball. You're gonna take 68 of them, and one of them's going to be 17-13. And there's like 50 should I say 50. There's like 100 teams with better records than that. Get out of here. But yeah. So, takeaways, which I had Gonzaga pegged to win this tournament. I feel really good about it. Unless I missed that they lost, which I'm pretty sure they didn't. But I think Gonzaga just has way more talent than anyone in the country. I really like Alabama the way they're playing. Iona played them really well in the first half, but Iona could get no bench scoring. I think they had like 4 or 6 points from bench players the entire game. Bama lit them up in the second half because of their depth. And that was one. That's one thing that the University of Tennessee had, and if we had Alabama's coach or Loyola's coach or a coach that actually runs some sort of offensive system that isn't, that doesn't predicate someone being posted up on one block or at all times, or calling for a post up on the right or left block at all times, we might be better. Or we might have actually done something this year, but alas. But yeah, really like Bama. I really like Oregon. Oregon's team, which they got, a little bit of an easier road considering they got to advance without playing one of their games. But I still think they're a good team. And they're well coached. They've got a great coach. They are. The Pac-12 is looking really good right now. You had Colorado obliterate Georgetown, which maybe there's a reason that Patrick Ewing never got that NBA job that he had been, or that he believed he had deserved for so long. When I think the last time I checked that score of their game against Colorado, it was 47-23. When the other team has double the amount of points you have, it's pretty bad. I mean, I'm used to seeing Georgetown play or only have 23 points, the end of the first half or whatever. But I'm not used to seeing the other team have 47. I remember when I was senior in high school, maybe. I think it was when Kwanzaa Martin had taken over as the Vols coach. We played Georgetown. I think the halftime score was 17-16 or something like that, and I think the final score was 40-36. Oh, it was atrocious. It was the worst game of basketball you've ever seen. Sorry, the worst version of men's basketball you've ever seen. But it did look like your average WNBA game in terms of the amount of just absolutely barfed up shots. Except the 3-point shooting was worse than a WNBA game. I'll give them that. But yeah, and I was really surprised when Oregon State beat Oklahoma State. I really like Cade Cunningham, but Oregon State seems to have a pretty good team. They seem to be well coached too. We'll see how that goes for them. But I would say the Big Ten and the Big 12 kind of disappointing out the gate. People seem pretty disappointed by Texas losing, although because I really like Shaka Smart. He's a pretty good coach. I believe he's still there. He was the guy who had VCU playing so well a few years back. But I saw that coming. I saw that Texas loss coming. I saw it coming. I figured they weren't. I don't know if necessarily that I really believed they were going to lose to ACU, but I thought it was possible. It was very possible, and it happened. And I have several friends who are ACU grads, and they were super excited. I think that alone, they'll be happy for 10 years off of that win. Those, as far as they're concerned, they made it to the Sweet 16. They beat Texas in the tourney. That's beastly. For people, or for anyone who doesn't know, Abilene Christian is located in Abilene, Texas. Let's see. Yeah, I don't know if I've really got much more for or more college basketball thoughts. But yeah, I would say Gonzaga and Alabama are my two favorites in the tourney. Not necessarily saying Alabama is the second most likely team to me to win the tourney. I'm just saying I love watching them play, which I hate to say as a Tennessee guy. But yeah, Gonzaga and Alabama are the teams. Which Gonzaga is the team I really think is going to win it. I mean, they've got a great team between. They just have so much. They have so much talent on the team. Suggs is incredible. And I'm honestly the guy when he was the Minnesota, I think it was state of Minnesota, Mr. Football and Mr. Basketball last year, or like his senior year of high school, and I believe he's a freshman. So, yeah, I'm terrified to know what he could have done on a football field as good as he is at basketball. And as athletic as he is, that guy could have done anything. But it seems like he's made the right choice. And that Kispert of theirs can rain fire from the heavens. Like, his jumper is super, super sweet. He's got a good one. I really like his chances in the... Like, I think Suggs could be, like, a star at the NBA level. I'll tell you who Suggs reminds me of. He reminds me of Derrick Rose with a jump shot, or with a more consistent jump shot at his age. That's who he reminds me of. So, I think, and he has a bit of Damian Lillard to him, when it comes to like his competitive fire and how he approaches clutch moments. Like, I think Suggs is going to be awesome. And he probably will not go number one, because that's probably going to be Cade Cunningham or Evan Mobley. But I don't know if there's anyone in this draft I'd rather have than Suggs. So, I think he's going to be fun. A lot of fun. And then Kispert's going to be a really good player too. I could see that guy ended up late lottery, although he might end up later. I would love to see Kispert end up on my Grizzlies though. So, I'm kind of looking at who's going to be in kind of that late lottery range, because my Grizzlies are probably going to end up around the bottom, or they're fighting at the bottom of the West. And as many injuries and other weird stuff we've had with COVID and stuff, I can't believe we're like right at 500, or like we've spent so much of the year like right in that range. And like, I'm super encouraged by that, but there's also part of me, like, from a team building aspect, I've really kind of been wishing that the Grizzlies were gonna pick a little bit higher, because I'd love a shot at. I mean, we have Morant, so Suggs would probably be there. There might be too much overlap there, although Suggs could definitely play the two. But I really like Keon Johnson that I mentioned earlier. Tennessee's fit next to Morant because he's definitely more of a two guard. He doesn't profile to me as like your team's primary like creator. Like, he could get there. That guy has a lot of development to do. But I think you put him with a guy like Morant, who is very unselfish and could set Johnson up in spots at times, and maybe be a little bit of a closer in age, like, mentor, and like, this is what I've been learning over the past, like, this is what I've learned over my first 2 years about like manipulation and this kind of stuff. Maybe he could help Johnson in that regard. But his defense, his athleticism on the wing, I think he's exactly what, or he could fit exactly kind of what we need. Because the Grizzlies really need, and we really need an upgrade at small forward, because I don't know if Winslow is that. Now, with a healthy Jackson, Winslow could play more, which at his best in Miami, Winslow was kind of like a point forward type. And there were periods where like his jumper was actually starting to go in, like it did his year at Duke, where he shot like over 40% from three, but he just early in his career wasn't replicating at Miami. But he's just so hurt all the time. Like, I'd feel more comfortable if Winslow was like a bench guy. Like, you throw Winslow on the court with like Tyus Jones and some of our bench guys, or like certain stuff like that, I feel like he's probably better. But I don't know. We'll see. But I really feel like we need a guy who plays like the two and the three, who's like really dynamic. Like, we need an upgrade on Dylan Brooks. Like, out of our starters right now, he's the guy who I feel like he plays really gritty defense. Like, I love that about him. But this guy thinks he's as good offensively as he is defensively. And he's not. He's not. He takes way too many bad shots. There are too many games where he shoots more than Morant, more than Valanciunas. And even when, like, Jaren Jackson was healthy, there were games where he was shooting more than Jaren Jackson. And that shouldn't be happening. He's not good enough for that. And he's never going to be good enough for that at this point. He's a 3-and-D wing who the 3 tends to end up being 1 for 5, 2 for 7. And you'll have nights where he's also jacking up really bad long twos and bricking them too. I really liked, like, at the time we extended Dylan Brooks on that 3-year, $30 million deal, he was shooting pretty well. I want to say he was shooting like over 35% from 3. I think it was maybe 38% at the time. Like, he was on a really good stretch from 3. Wasn't shooting as many of those long twos. And he was playmaking a little bit. But at this point, like, if Dylan Brooks doesn't tone back his shooting or like his shot selection, really I would like the Grizzlies to consolidate him. And we have so much depth on this team right now. If we could consolidate him and someone else for more of a better shooter, I would dig it. Like we really need someone who could, and I mean, it's not like these guys grow on trees, but we need someone who's like in that who's either 6'6" and like super long arms, or like 6'8" to 6'10", who can really defend and can knock down like 35% of his threes or better. But those guys don't grow on trees. But I'm looking at like some of these guys that just got drafted this year. You look at a Sadiq Bey. I don't know how that guy fell to 19 in the draft. But he's been great. Like, Detroit, say what you will about them picking like Isaiah Stewart at 16. He actually looks kind of okay. That I expected. I just wouldn't have picked him at 16 with who was on the board. And I still like Killian Hayes a lot long term. He is really young, and he's been thrown to the wolves. I think Killian Hayes is going to be fine long term. I really like his prospects long term. I'm not like Kevin O'Connor high on him, where he was my number one guy or my number one prospect, because that was LaMelo Ball for me. And I told everyone so. Of course, then ends up with that bad wrist fracture. So his rookie year's done, but unless Anthony Edwards continues like to supernova like he's done recently for the rest of the season, or Tyrese Halliburton somehow ends up just averaging 20 points per game for like the rest of the year, or maybe 18 and some other stuff, I'd almost say that LaMelo Ball still should be the Rookie of the Year by the end of the year, because he's just been incredible since they put him in the starting lineup. Because I would say he's already arguably I'd say he's easily a top 50 player at this point, maybe even top 40. Like, I would take him over every player on a number of teams. And there's some guys that maybe he's technically not better than right now, but by the end of next year, I'd say he's going to be better than. And I'll tell you right now, moving forward, I'd rather have him than guys like, and you can call me crazy, I'd rather have LaMelo Ball moving forward than Devin Booker, Brandon Ingram. I think some other, or a couple more guys that people would be like, are you stupid? I'd say he's already better than John Wall. Although John Wall's looked better this year than I think a lot of people expected. I'd rather have LaMelo Ball than Russell Westbrook. That's for sure. Man, here comes the Russ stands. A knife's going to come flying through my window any moment now. I've gotten some fights with him in YouTube comments and on Twitter about Russell Westbrook. Ugh. Not a big Russ fan at this stage. But I really like LaMelo Ball. But as I was saying, I don't know how Sadiq Bey fell as far as he did. And Detroit got a real steal there. I mean, when you look at Aaron Nesmith, who went 11th, who I was really high on actually, hasn't done much for the Celtics, but it's hard to develop a wing when you have Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown already on the roster taking up huge minutes, and you have some decent guys like Semi Ojeleye, who I really like coming out of the draft, and he's a little bit underrated, I think, just because of some of the star power on his team, because he's not as good. Semi Ojeleye actually would be, I think, a perfect fit for my Grizzlies. I'd love to be able to get him somehow. If we could, I'd swap Gorgie Jing for him right now. As good as Gorgie has been when we played him this year. Heck, there was a chunk of the season where he was leading the NBA in 3-point percentage, which is wild. So, but it's funny how which Romeo Langford's had some injuries, and that's been one of his issues, but it seems like the Celtics have done, for the most part, a really poor job of developing a lot of their young talent after Brown, and you had the era of Brown and Smart and Rozier, and then they drafted Tatum, and Tatum's been really good, but Tatum was probably always going to be really good. And in some regards, it almost seems like some of these guys are getting better more because of their own personal trainers than necessarily their teams. I do wonder, because you look at Robert Williams and some of the really big flashes he's had even this season, and there's certain things where I'm like, yeah, but maybe he's not going to grow out of those habits if you don't play him. And I just wonder if that's kind of happening with Nesmith. If he started off and he kind of was rough, and now it's like he feels just defeated because he knows he's not getting, or you shelve the guy because he's not working out, or because he has a couple bad games. Like, well, I'm going to go to this guy because maybe he doesn't have as much ceiling, but I know what I'm going to get from him at this point. And it's like, yeah, this is going to happen with young guys, but you have to give them the opportunity to fail and work through the failure. And I don't know if Nesmith's getting that, because I was a big Nesmith fan, especially if his shooting. Like, I felt like his shooting was easily going to translate, and he's got good size. Like, he should be able to play. Like, he should credibly be able to play the 4 in smaller lineups, and So, but when I saw that Boston took him, I was actually kind of disappointed. I'm like, well, look at their wing rotation, and like, yeah, everyone needs more wings, but it's like, I just, because Romeo Langford hasn't really developed, I kind of questioned whether like he was really, or whether Nesmith was really going to get the shot. And so far, I don't really think he's been given enough opportunity. So, but yeah. So I've talked way more. I've been talking about the NBA. I haven't even gotten to my free agency stuff. So, there will definitely be more NBA content on this channel. I just wanted, when I started the stream, it was like free agency week 1. So I was going hard into NFL content, which NFL and college football are going to be my main focuses on the channel. But like, I also really like watching NBA basketball, despite some of the, just there being, I think, too much politic stuff involved at different times, because that stuff kind of annoys me, because like, I can end up in political wormholes, but like, sports to me is an escape from that in a lot of regards. I know there's a lot of people who are like, yes, but sports platforms have regularly been used for political da-da-da-da-da, and I'm like, yeah, and sometimes the media makes out those political statements to be more than what they are, to be honest. And typically, yes, it creates conversation, but a lot of times I think it sometimes leads to divide, especially nowadays. Because we are so, it seems like so many people are so like just politically, like, not just different, but opposed to each other. It just leads to more division, and at the end of the day, like, it'd be nice if we could unify over something and not have to bow down to one or the other side's political beliefs in order to unify, because that's like what they do. So whatever, or that's kind of how things are going. Sorry, I'm getting off on this kind of stuff again, but I prefer to keep my politics out of sports, and for the most part on this show, I'm going to try and do my best to do that. Although sometimes when I talk about it, obviously that's giving my own social and political opinion. So, it's that paradox or catch-22, whatever. By saying you're keeping things not political, you're also maybe making a political statement. So, anyway, so let's get into some more free agency stuff. Wow, that didn't sound enthusiastic at all. Well, it's been kind of hard to keep track of it because so I have like an iPad that I typically use more than like my computer for certain things, like because I can kind of have my iPad like over here and kind of blow something up if I wanted. But ESPN decided with their free agency tracker this year, instead of just doing like they used to do and just posting it, each little thing as a, like, basically like a bullet on this list, they decided to integrate the stupid social media posts where they were reported on Twitter into the page, and it just crashes, or it causes like, I get like 4 or 5 things in, and then the page has to reload because it's overloaded with links. Which maybe part of that's because my iPad's a little old, but I've talked to some other people and they have the same issue with ESPN's crappily designed website. So it's just made it a pain in the butt to mess with. But at this point, it's less about me like reporting deals to whoever streams in, but this is. I kind of talked about some winners and losers on Friday, and I kind of want to go back over some of them with a little more context for some thoughts. And there were some other things that I've thought of since, and some of it's because of a couple of deals that have been signed since. But I've seen some analysis as well, and I was looking at, like, Bill Barnwell put out his least favorite free agent contracts. It was like his opinion on the 7 worst ones, and he put the Jonnu Smith deal on there, and he can use whatever analytics or say that it's an overpay or do whatever he wants. Bill Barnwell's being an idiot, and he could be the smartest idiot on earth. I don't care. It's still stupid. His analysis is just plain dumb. Jonnu Smith has improved every year he's been every year he has been in the NFL. He is a quality weapon at the position. He's a dynamic athlete at the tight end position. Great after the catch. He fits exactly what New England wants to do, what the Patriots want to do, because it seems very obvious that they are trying to build this team like they were building their offenses like 5-6 years ago, or not even really that long ago, but when Gronk was there. Obviously, they don't have Gronk, and Hunter Henry and Jonnu Smith aren't Gronk, but they're both really, really good athletes at the position in different ways. They're built differently, because Jonnu's really more like, I think he's a beefier, more athletic Aaron Hernandez type. And Aaron Hernandez was extremely effective in New England. He was also a really effective murderer on the side, apparently. Well, except he got caught. Which, thank goodness. But anyway, I really like Jonnu, personally. Which, I'm a little biased. I'm a Titans fan. I really wanted us to keep him, but I mean, he's good. I wish the Titans had either been able to or willing to keep him, because I think we're going to miss a dimension to our offense this year unless we're able to find a replacement. Because I'm sorry, Anthony Ferkser cannot do what Jonnu did. Jeff Swain isn't going to do what Jonnu did. Neither is Michael Pruitt, if he's back. We don't have that guy. And it's not like those guys grow on trees. Now, this tight end class is better than last year's class, in my opinion. But I have a feeling we're not going to draft Kyle Pitts because he's not going to fall to us. Nor is he necessarily Jonnu Smith either. Although he is an elite weapon and probably a better player long term, for sure. I mean, Pitts is my number 2 prospect for this draft. But Pat Freiermuth, probably going to go in the second round. I would say might be gone by the Titans' second round pick. But we have other needs that we really need to address. And I like Freiermuth. I think he's probably the best all-around tight end. Like, if you're going to, depending on how much you count blocking and whatnot and receiving. Although I think Pitts is actually a solid blocker. But I don't know if I want to draft Freiermuth in the second round based on what our needs are and where the depth is. Because Jonnu was a late round pick. Like, Jonnu was, I think, a 4th round pick. If he wasn't 4th, he was a 3rd. But beyond that, like, Brevin Jordan might be available in 3rd, but he probably won't slide to, like, our pick in the 3rd. Really good all-around tight end. But he's not necessarily Jonnu. There's a tight end from Georgia. I want to say his name's like Wanham, maybe? DJ Wanham. No, that's a different player. I think he's already in the NFL. I'm trying to remember the name of this Georgia tight end. He's super athletic. He wasn't used a ton last year. But he wowed at the Senior Bowl. And he has a ton of upside. He has a lot of that of the same traits Jonnu has, and I would love to see him like end up with us, and we could get him on day 3. So, but I think Bill Barnwell's an idiot for saying that Jonnu Smith is a bad contract. Could you say the Patriots maybe overpaid a little? Maybe. I don't know, though. Because I don't know what Jonnu's market was necessarily. Because I didn't hear any reports about any other offers necessarily. And 4 years, $50 million is a little steep. In total, I mean that's $12.5 million a year. At the same time, Jonnu Smith scored 9 touchdowns last year, one of them rushing, and he was like our 4th option on offense behind Derrick Henry running the ball and then passing to A.J. Brown, passing to Corey Davis, but he was our top guy in the red zone. You put Smith in 2 tight end sets with Hunter Henry, and you put, a speedy wideout like Nelson Aguilar on the outside, which he was another one of Bill Barnwell's worst contracts, which it turns out people were reporting that deal as 2 for $26. Barnwell listed as 2 for $22. I actually like the Aguilar deal more, that it's $11 million a year. I can understand like the idea of like, yeah, but Aguilar's probably going to have a down year or 2 now because that's just how his career's gone. But I'm also like, yeah, but the Patriots have done a pretty good job of acquiring guys like him, like say Brandon Cooks. Brandon Cooks was good with the Patriots. Like established receivers. If they drafted Aguilar, I'd be like, well, he's not going to develop because they don't develop any of their receivers that they draft highly. But this is a guy they're bringing in, so I kind of trust this move a little more. I mean, heck, they actually made Damiere Byrd kind of useful. Damiere Byrd had the best year of his career there, and Byrd had not done anything anywhere. So maybe I'm trusting the Patriots too much, but for the most part, that's been a almost certainty, is that the Patriots know what they're doing and make good moves more often than not. Not that everything they do works out, obviously. Like anytime they've drafted a receiver in the first 2 rounds, or even 3 rounds, really. But, they didn't draft Aguilar. They're signing him in free agency. They're acquiring him, or like acquiring him some way other than the draft. That's tended to work out really well for them. So, yeah, Bill Barnwell, you're slipping. You're slipping. You were better with Grantland. So yeah. But the Patriots are still a winner for me in free agency. They've done really well. I listed the Jets as a winner because I've liked their move so far, but they've made a move that I did not like. I do not like Gerard Davis at $5.5 million. Because one, I can't believe his market was that good on a 1-year deal, or a deal, any year deal. Yes, he was a former first-round pick, but the Titans were able to bring back Jayon Brown at at $5.25 million, and Jayon Brown is really, really good. He's been one of the better linebackers over the past few years. I mean, he was a 5th-round pick out of, I believe, UCLA. We let Avery Williamson walk, actually, because of how good Jayon Brown was. Avery Williamson, who was a previous 5th-round pick that we had developed. And Gerard Davis, for the most part, hadn't been good. He's had a little bit of a bounce. I think he had a little bit of a rebound last year to a degree, but when you draft a guy like, what was it, 25th, 26th? Somewhere in the 20s. Maybe it was a little earlier than that, but it was like in the 20s. You expect that linebacker to be a stud every down backer. And Davis just hasn't been that. He hasn't been consistent. He hadn't been, because the thing was, he was athletic, so everyone was like, all this coverage potential. He hadn't been good in coverage. It's like, he hasn't really been like great at anything. He hasn't really been necessarily good at anything. He's been average or worse at basically everything. Jayon Brown has been a really good coverage linebacker, sideline to sideline player at the linebacker position. And he's been better than Rashaan Evans, who we drafted in the first round in 2019. I believe it was 20. Or no. Is it 2019 or 2018? Might have been 2018 now. It's one of those years. It was 2018, 2019. I'd need to look at. But yeah, it was 2018. It was 2018 because Jeffrey Simmons was 2019, and then Isaiah Wilson was 2020. And I really liked Evans, and I liked that pick. I wanted us to pick him in 2018, and we did. But he's been injured. No, even when he's been healthy, he hasn't been as good in coverage as was hoped. So, like, us getting Jayon Brown back on a one-year deal, which I think Brown took it because I think he's wanting more. And he honestly deserves a bigger deal than that. Because really, when I saw that 5.25 figure, I'm like, man, I at least thought Jayon Brown would be in the market for the contract Avery Williamson had a few years ago. Even with the cap down, like, there were enough teams with cap space that could use linebacker help that I was kind of like, someone's going to want that guy. So, 1 year 5.25, and you've got Jared Davis getting 5.5 for a year, and he's not as good. That wasn't a good move for the Jets, in my opinion. Now, Davis, I mean, he's still young. He can improve. And if he ends up being above average, which maybe Robert Salah will get the best out of Jarrad Davis. I mean, you look at what he did in San Francisco with the linebackers they've gotten, the young linebackers they've drafted. Fred Warner and Dre Greenlaw. They've done really well with those guys. Warner has become one of the best linebackers in the league, and Greenlaw is a really good one. So maybe Salah can get the best out of Davis. But still, you can get the best out of Davis, and I would assume they could have probably gotten him for less than that. And if they couldn't, they could have gotten someone who's as good for less. And this is a deep, like, off-ball linebacker class. Because I might get into that today. That might be my top 10 draft prospects. I didn't list it on the video, like, because I was kind of wanting to do some more work. But I might go into my off-ball linebackers today. Because it is a deep class of, like, potential impact guys. Of course, not all those guys are going to work out. I mean, it always happens that they end up in a bad developmental situation, or they don't find the way to put it all their tools to use. But this is a really, really deep class of linebackers that I really like. So, but anyway, I still think the Jets, for the most part, have won in free agency. I like Carl Lawson. With the Jets transitioning from a 3-4 to a 4-3 for the first time in like 15 years, they need a guy like Lawson. He's a perfect 4-3 end. This was the other move the Jets made, and I like this one. Sheldon Rankins, 2 years, $17 million. He's dealt with injuries, but the Saints really did want to try and retain him this offseason. There's a reason they picked up his fifth-year option for last year at $7.69 million. So the Jets are paying him like 8.5 mil per year on this deal. I think like 11 million was guaranteed, something like that. But you drop him in there next to Quinnen Williams and in a rotational role with that Fatuasi that they drafted last year. I like their D tackles. It's he definitely helps their interior, their defensive interior, and that's going to help the defensive ends get after the quarterback. So, because on passing downs, Williams and Rankins, those are two athletic, like, penetrating pass rushers. Like, those guys have really great get off. They have really good hands. Like, that was one of the reasons, like, people really like Rankins. He still needed some work, but he had this really nice, like, he had a really nice kind of swim move that he used a lot at Louisville. And I really like the fit with him and Williams next to each other. So, still don't like that Gerard Davis contract. But it's only for a year, so it's not like they're killing themselves. Like, if the worst thing you did is sign or at least as of right now, the worst thing you've done is sign a former first-round pick with immense talent to a contract that's probably, or that I would say is maybe $1.5 to $2 million of an overpay that's only a year long. If that's the worst thing you did this offseason so far, then actually you're probably having a pretty good offseason. So another team I'm going to put in the losers category that I didn't have like at first. I kind of want to put the Cowboys in the losers column. They finally locked Dak down to a contract, but it's pretty big. I mean, you're paying $40 million a year to this guy. And unlike with, like, Patrick Mahomes or whatever, because of, like, the rookie deal he was on and just other things, like, it doesn't seem to be structured in a way that's really helping your team out, like, in the short term, in terms of cap. And you're getting to this point where, like, Tyron Smith may not be long for the elite left tackles. He might be already out of that conversation. We'll see come fall. Zach Martin's been having some injury issues, too. DeMarcus Lawrence has, as far as I'm concerned, has not lived up to his contract. He's really good, but he's not as good as his contract. And some of your other picks, like Leighton Vander Esch, started off kind of good, but he's not really progressed. Jalen Brown. Jalen Smith. Jalen Smith. Was he really worth that contract extension you gave him at this point? I don't know. And because of like the way their team is constructed, they really haven't been able to do anything in free agency. So we'll see. Maybe they're healthy come fall, and maybe things are better. But I didn't like the Mike McCarthy hiring when they made it. And after year one, yes, Dak was injured, but Andy Dalton is a good quarterback. Like, he's an above-average quarterback. He was not the problem in Cincinnati. He wasn't keeping them from winning games in Cincinnati. If anything, he was winning them helping them win games when their coaches were, or their coaching staff and just their organization as a whole wasn't wasn't actually helping them win in a lot of cases. Like, Cincinnati has the smallest scouting staff in the league. To the point that, like, assistant coaches actually have to do a lot of, or more scouting work than most teams' assistant coaches do. Like, they actually have scouting responsibilities rather than just they're presented with different stuff, from what I understand. Like, it takes away from their, like, day-to-day coaching stuff. And they're still the only team that doesn't have an indoor practice facility. Which is very useful. Extremely useful. So, yeah, I think Andy Dalton's a good quarterback still. I'm actually glad that Chicago's given him a shot. Now, this is with Matt Nagy, so I mean, take that with a grain of salt. But you give him Allen Robinson, you give him Anthony Miller. I'm not sure who they're. Well, Cole Kmet at tight end is going into year 2. They got a good running back room. They definitely could. They need to work on their offensive tackles or figure out their offensive tackle situation. But Andy Dalton is a better quarterback than Nick Foles. And he's better than Mitchell Trubisky. This team was a playoff caliber team with Mitchell Trubisky at quarterback. This team should definitely be a playoff caliber team with Andy Dalton at quarterback. Although they've got some stuff to answer themselves on defense with Kyle Fuller being out and them seemingly shopping Akeem Hicks. But they've done a really good job of building up talent on that roster. Although they did lose, I believe they lost, Roy Robertson Harris or Robertson something, young guy that they developed. He signed elsewhere on what I thought was a really good deal. I'm trying to remember where it was though. This has been a little while. This was last week. But anyway, we'll see. But the Bears have some really good pieces still. Like Jalen Johnson, I really liked last year, and he was really good for a rookie corner. You got Eddie Johnson back there at safety, or Eddie Jackson back there at safety. Really, really good safety. But I don't know. We'll see. I mean, they've got Khalil Mack. You've got Roquan Smith. Like, they have some really good pieces at every level of the defense. You got Eddie Goldman, I think, is their nose tackle. Although, it's going to be interesting, like, that defense without Akeem Hicks. Akeem Hicks, low-key, really important part of that defense. He's been really, really good his entire career. Probably one of the most... He's probably the most talented guys in relation to the lack of, like, hype he gets. Because, like, I don't necessarily want to call him underrated. He's just not talked about enough. So, yeah. So I really like the Andy Dalton signing for the Bears. I think that was actually a win. People are talking about, yeah, but $23 million. It's like, it's a contract with, I think, incentives up to $23 million. It's not fully guaranteed. I think like $10 million of it is fully guaranteed though. But if Dalton works out, this year for the Bears. Like, him at $23 million is actually a really good number for a guy who, at his best, can get to like that 10th best quarterback in the, like, he should be end up somewhere in the top half of the league in terms of quarterback play this year, I would think. At the very least, top 20. If you can get to the top 20, you have good enough quarterback play that if the rest of your team is playing well, you can win the Super Bowl. And I would say he has the ability to... It's like, I would be shocked if he wasn't like a top 15 quarterback this year. Like, honestly. It would very much shock me if he wasn't at least a top 15 quarterback with Allen Robinson there and Anthony Miller. He has a... And they had a young receiver breakout too last year who was like undrafted, or he was like 5th or 6th round guy, who was really good. Man, I can't believe I'm blanking on his name right now. He was a small school guy, or a smaller school guy. Wasn't a Power 5 guy. Yeah, that annoys me that I'm forgetting his name. But they've got good weapons there in Chicago. And they might add to that during the draft, or, during waves 2 and 3 of free agency, but we'll see. But yeah, so yeah, I really like the but the Bears have lost a bit this offseason, and they've got to figure out the tackle. So I'm not going to necessarily label them a winner, but I like that deal. I mentioned that I had the Redskins as winners. I've really liked their offseason so far. And I really like the Browns offseason so far. And they made another really, I think, a solid signing for like their depth. They've let Larry Ongmanobi leave, who's like a homegrown guy. But they're bringing in a veteran in Malik Jackson, who's been a solid defensive lineman for years, and he's not at his peak anymore. Like when Jacksonville first signed him to like a big free agent deal, he was coming off time with the Broncos where they were playing kind of like a hybrid front where and he did this at Tennessee too, like in college with us. He would play like 4-3 end, and then he would in nickel sets or on passing downs, he'd like kick inside to D tackle. But he was playing like he could play your strong side end in the 4-3. He could play the 5 technique in a 3-4. He could play, and he can play that sometimes it's been referred to as a UT, but usually it's called like the 3 technique role in the 4-3. He's a really good 3 technique in the 4-3 penetrator. So a lot of times it's like you would usually call those like the 3, the 4, and the 3, the 5, and the 7. So they're going to bring him in, and that'll help their pass rush. Even though he's not quite as quick as he was, as a rotational piece along the D-line, that's solid. I really like that move. The Browns are really focusing on their defense. There's been a lot of hype, or towards the end of the season, like that they were thinking about probably trading Odell Beckham Jr. I would only do that if someone's giving me like decent value. Odell is really good, and I think with the offense they're running now, um, and just more time. Like, I'd say give it another year. And the Browns also were able to re-sign Rashad Higgins to a really cheap contract. I think they got him for like $3 million or less, or it was like 3.25 or $3 million. Might have been two. Almost want to say it was under $3 million, but it was somewhere around $3 million for a year. And I was just like, I thought that was a steal. Higgins is a solid like tertiary option, or like a solid complementary receiver. Like, for a lot of last season, he was like their number 2 receiver, and he's good. If he's your second, third receiver, I think you're doing really good. Especially like if he's your third receiver, I think you're doing really good. If you have like a really good tight end and a really good number 1 option, he's a solid like complementary piece. So I don't know. I really like what the Browns are doing this offseason. Like the John Johnson signing a lot. I think the Troy Hill signing's good. It's a little long considering the guy's going to be 30 and it's a 4-year deal, but really it's a 2-year deal. It's like a 2-year deal for like the guaranteed money, not 4 years, $24 million, and that's not bad. Especially when you've got a corner as good as Denzel Ward to be your number 1. And you have a guy like Greedy Williams who is still developing, who he had an unfortunate shoulder injury, but he's still got a ton of potential. Like Hill's a really solid guy to just add as a veteran presence. He should help that cornerback room. And then this also happened over the weekend. Kenny Golladay finally signed. He signed with the Giants, 4 years, $72 million. I think it was $40 million guaranteed. So, kind of keeping with that trend of basically the first full 2 years of salary guaranteed, and then a little bit of signing bonus that's trickled through the rest of the contract. So, I think Galladay's a great fit for the Giants because they really didn't have like a true number 1 receiver. And I think they're still trying. Supposedly they're shopping Evan Ingram around. We'll see about that. But I really like Darius Slayton. But Slayton to me is like a really good number 2 receiver. Really good downfield threat. He's really good on slants, but he's not like great at like the entire route tree. Like he's not like a Julio Jones, AJ Green type of receiver. But I really like Slayton. Sterling Shepard, really good number 2 option. But he is limited. Like, if Slayton and Shepard are like your top 2 guys, it's not bad, but you don't have someone who's just going to... You don't really have that guy who is going to just physically imprint himself on the game and that you can just count on to just catch the ball even when there's no separation, or like you don't necessarily trust those guys against perfect coverage, basically, like you would a Michael Thomas or a DeAndre Hopkins or a Julio or peak AJ Green, you know. Because like I said, Slayton, there are types of routes that he's extremely good on, but he's not like the best route runner, and he's kind of limited in that regard. Shepard's a really good like technical route runner and whatnot, but he also has injury issues, and he's not like a physically dominant receiver. And while he's like a really, really good technical receiver, like he's not like the best route runner. he doesn't create like the most separation. So like he's good, and like I said, I really like Rashad Higgins. I would say that like both of these guys are better than Higgins, but although I really like Higgins, so maybe I'm like, I don't know. Like I really like Higgins. Like this part is like, is he really that like is Sterling Shepard really that much better than him? Maybe it's me thinking I'm too high on Higgins, saying that Shepard's definitely better than Higgins. I don't know. But yeah, I think you've got two really good guys who, if they are your secondary receiving options, then your receiving core is probably really, really good. Kenny Galladay gives them a legit number one, a legit red zone like dominator, contested catch dominator. Like that's the kind of receiver they didn't have, and that should help Daniel Jones a lot. And if they keep Evan Ingram, they're 11 personnel with Barkley, Ingram, Galladay, Slayton, and Shepard. Although Shepard actually has played mostly on the outside, I want to say, and not really played a whole lot in the slot, so I don't know if he'll translate to the slot. You would think he would, but I don't know. Maybe it would be pertinent for them to try and bring Golden Tate back or find a slot receiver. But I don't know. I think it will probably start out with them trying to run Shepard as their slot in those personnel groupings. But I really like that skill position group now for the Giants. I don't like the fact that Kevin Zeitler's not there anymore, though. That's not ideal. I mean, yeah, he was making a lot of money, but considering what he signed with the Ravens for, I'm like, y'all couldn't restructure him there? But this is a very deep, like, offensive tackle class. There's also some really good a lot of really good interior linemen in this class. So, I would say that it wouldn't be crazy if the Giants like went super hard on the offensive line for this class, even after drafting Andrew Thomas in the first round last year and having Nate Solder. But they definitely have some holes still to fill. Because you could argue they really need to, like, I would say the Giants really need pass rush still. Probably need to, especially with DeAndre Baker not necessarily working out the greatest so far. Probably need to go after corner help. But they really need to work on that interior line, offensive line. For sure. But with that being said, that Galladay signing, I think, is enough to put the Giants into a slight winner. Even though losing Dalvin Tomlinson's not, or definitely hurts them. It's like they did draft Dexter Lawrence a couple years ago in the first round, so they have like a big space-eating run plugger, you know. But we shall see how things continue to work out for. We'll see what they do the rest of the offseason and in the draft. I like the 49ers. I think the 49ers so far are winners. Like getting back Trent Williams, it's a massive contract, but you had to do it. And signing Alex Mack to be your new center, I think was a really good move. Yeah, he's in his mid-30s or whatever, but centers tend to age pretty well. Mack has been really healthy, particularly over his time in Atlanta, or at least I feel like he's been pretty healthy over his time in Atlanta. But Alex Mack is one of the best centers of the past, or of, the since 2000. Like as far as I'm concerned, Alex Mack should probably go down as a Hall of Famer at this point. He's been great, legitimately great at the position. So, and what's crazy is the Cleveland Browns had him and Joe Thomas on their offensive line together at the same time for years, and they didn't win crap. But I think that was a really good move for the 49ers. I like them re-signing Emmanuel Mosley to a 2-year deal worth $5.1 million a year. He was a undrafted free agent out of the University of Tennessee, and he has been solid starting opposite of Richard Sherman. He's been perfect in their scheme. And sometimes it's just those mid-level moves, like when you've drafted well and you've done a good job of, at other points of identifying outside talents and bringing them in through trades or free agency. But for them, they've done a number of them on trades. But, I just think these are two, really solid moves that help solidify starting spots for their team. And then I really like the Zietler signing for the Ravens. Because I believe that's who signed him. It was the Ravens. Yeah. Because that's going to lock down one of their guard spots. I believe left guard. And of course, I've talked extensively about how much I like the Patriots' moves, even if Aguilar might be a little bit of an overpay for what you would like, considering his track record being so up and down. But I like it. I like their offseason. I see the plan. Whereas with the Raiders, I don't see any coherent plan, unless that plan is to destroy the franchise again. And I'm not enthused about what my Titans have done so far. Other than getting Jayon Brown back is great. Signing Bud Dupree, we needed a pass rusher, so we went out and paid for a guy who's coming off an injury. I don't love it, but I get it. And I like Bud Dupree as a player. I just I don't know. I really don't know if he's going to be, or if he's going to end up being worth that contract. What I do know is that probably means we're not drafting an edge rusher in the first round, which in some ways kind of bums me out because there was a guy that I thought was perfect. And when I get into my top 10 pass rushers, this guy is going to top my list. And Brett Kelman did an amazing video on him recently. His latest video is on him. And it's kind of interesting, his first two big prospect videos he's done so far for his top guys at these two spots line up exactly with me. Because I'm Joker, Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah. he is my number one like off ball linebacker. Is also Brett's. He did a great job on, or he did a great video on him too. And then, he did a video on, or his recent video on Jalen Phillips out of Miami, defensive end, which Miami plays a 4-3, like the Miami Hurricanes play a 4-3 defense, but I think Phillips would have worked in a 3-4 scheme. I think he's got the athleticism and agility to do that. But this guy is not a raw prospect in that he needs a ton of refinement. Like, he has a lot of technique already. And there is tape of him adapting mid-game to, offensive tackles stonewalling him, or having, like, him realizing, oh, I can't lean on, this is the way I'm trying to beat him. It's like, okay, this isn't working. How am I going to counter this? And then him finding counters and changing his game plan and succeeding in games. And if you're seeing that from guys already at the college level, especially when they have the kind of elite, like, physical tangible, or like physical tools that Phillips has, the fact this guy isn't, like, right now considered a top 10 lock because of people being concerned about some past concussion issues. One concussion in the future is enough to derail your entire career, if you've had concussions or not, depending on the severity of the concussion. If you're going to let that get in the way, and this is the other thing, considering at his position, you don't tend to see too many concussions from his position, particularly at the NFL level. So I'm just not going to worry about that. Like, that's not something I'm going to worry about. Jalen Phillips is the best pass rusher in this class. And he is worthy of a top 10 pick, as far as I'm concerned. He's as physically gifted as any pass rusher in this class, really. He's as physically gifted as Kewidi Paye and Gregory Rousseau. He's not as long as Rousseau. I don't know if he's quite as thick as Paye, but he's around the similar size. But I mean, the guy's got really great size. Like, it's like you look at his frame, it's like, that's basically a prototype frame right there. Oh man, he's got a crazy good first step. I mean, he's got powerful hand. He's got a powerful build. He's got great bend and flexibility. Like, this guy blends speed, power, and flexibility. What are we missing here? Seriously, there's nothing missing from this package. And he checks the production box. This guy has everything. And he's got intelligence. He's got football intelligence. So I don't know why Phillips isn't up there. He reminds me a lot of the top pass rushers that have come before in recent years. He has the same traits and a lot of the same, like, stuff you see on tape as the Bosa brothers, as the Watt brothers. He's more explosive than the Bosas. If anything, he kind of reminds... This is the way Brett Kelman put it, because I'm not going to steal this from him, because this is not the first... This isn't the comp I had for him originally. But I think he really nailed it with the comp of... He compared Phillips to a hybrid of JJ and TJ Watt. Because TJ is very much built like a 3-4 outside linebacker. JJ very much, he's like the prototype for an athletic 5 technique defensive end. Whereas Phillips is built perfectly for the 4-3 end, like that 7 technique. Although he's athletic enough, I could see him in like a wide 9 technique, or I think he could play 3-4 backer. Like he did drop back into coverage some at Miami. I think he could do some of like that short level like zone. But he does. He plays like the Watts. In that he has a very cerebral element to his game, but he has a powerful and explosive element to it. He's so balanced. Because like if there's one knock on the Bosa brothers, it's that they're not super fast. They're a little slow on the edge in terms of top speed. But they're so technically proficient. And honestly, when you look at their play speed, though, they don't necessarily play like their 4.8. Like these guys kind of ran slower 40 times for like elite edge rushers, but they have everything in their toolbox, and obviously it has not stopped them from being elite players at the pro level. And Phillips, he's not as physically dominant as say like a Chase Young, but I would say he's a better technician than Chase. But this is the thing that Kelman points out on tape that reminds him the most about the Watt brothers, and it's how he plays the run. He doesn't typically, or he doesn't always set the edge like you would see from like the standard edge player. Instead, he backdoors blockers on, or like that edge blocker on run plays. Instead of keeping the tackle or like that blocker like face up and kind of pushing him, like trying to force the play back inside towards the rest of the defense, Phillips likes to use that blocker trying to push him, say, outside or whatever, and he ducks inside behind the blocker. He slips inside and uses his quickness and explosion to get to that running back. And while there were a couple times on tape where this obviously compromised defense and the running back was able to get the edge and make a big play, more often than not, he's actually making a positive play. Like, the positive plays far outweigh the bad. And their impact far outweighs from the bad. And if you, as a coach, are aware of this tendency and are encouraging this tendency, which it looked like the Miami Hurricanes coaches were encouraging this, if you've got speedy ranging linebackers behind, this isn't going to be an issue. If you've got one or two safeties who are really good against at getting to the edge, whatever, against the run, this is going to be an absolute asset for you. Because like with the Texans, during J.J. Watt's time there, you had, I think early in his career, you had Brian Cushing, but he's played a lot of his career with, or like recent years with Benardrick McKinney and Zach Cunningham as his two middle linebackers. Those guys are both quick and really good against the run. You have T.J. Watt playing in Pittsburgh, and you look at who he's had at middle linebacker the last 2 seasons. Well, you've got Vance Williams at one spot, who he's a really smart player, pretty good athlete at the position, but you look at Devin Bush. Devin Bush has 4.4 speed at like 235, 240. Actually, I think he's more like 230, 235. But Devin Bush is a really fast linebacker and really good at taking angles and pursuing. So, and then you have their strong safety, Terrell Edmonds, who is a really good athlete. I believe he ran like a 4.47 40, 4.45 40. And he's the brother of Tremaine Edmonds, linebacker for the Buffalo Bills, who's a freak athlete. Like, dude. You know, it's like 6'5", 240-pound linebackers that run like a 4.5 flat. Although he honestly at times looks like he plays faster than 4.5. Because I want to say he ran like a 4.5, 4.51. But he's super fluid. Like, he's a freak. Terrell Edmonds is a really good athlete in his own right for being a smaller player. You've got Bush and Williams and Edmonds, and then Minka Fitzpatrick as well. There are others, or like their free safety, because Minka's great too. Minka's just an elite all around safety. You've got those guys back there who can make up ground, and when you're planning for your edge guy kind of backdooring that play. TJ Watt, extremely effective, makes a ton of plays in the backfield, blows up a lot of plays. So Jalen Phillips plays a lot like them in run defense in particular, but he also has a lot of similar like pass rushing tape, like really good with his hands, thinks, adapts really well in games already at the college level. So I think Jalen Phillips is an elite pass rush prospect. I think Russo and Paye have like infinite upside as well, but they're not as good as Phillips right now, and Phillips has as high if a ceiling as they do. Like, I think he's further along, and I think that means he's probably more likely to get there as well. Like, I believe in him as a prospect, where I have more questions about Russo and Paye. So, anyway, got off on draft stuff. It's like you're gonna see me like talking about things and just get off on draft stuff all the time because I love it. I love projecting players. But yeah, and I will say I can't remember if I talked about it much on Friday because I really got into it on the Raiders. But Houston is trying to give Las Vegas a run, it seems, with some of their deals, because they signed two more that I'm just like shaking my head over. They restructured David Johnson's contract, which definitely helped, but they're still paying him like $6.2 million this year. They signed Mark Ingram to like a 1-year, $3 million deal after he looked like he was breaking down before our eyes last year in Baltimore. Then they signed Philip Lindsay, who I like. I like him better than David Johnson and Mark Ingram, probably combined. They're signing him to like a $3.25 million deal, 1-year deal. I mean, how many running backs are you going to sign to multi-million-dollar deals? Like veteran running backs. I mean, like right now you're setting them up. And yes, for Johnson, this probably means he won't. It's like, which there's money next year, I believe. Because, like, I think there's another year on this deal, whatever. But you can be. It's like 2 of these are 1-year deals, and you could be out of David Johnson's contract next year. But you cut Duke Johnson. And Duke Johnson has been healthier than, you could argue, all 3 of these backs, but he's been healthier than David Johnson and Philip Lindsay. And receiving-wise, he's better than all of them at this point. Although peak David Johnson was an elite receiving back. Mark Ingram's a good receiving back. Philip Lindsay's a good receiving back. But Duke Johnson really was as good as peak David Johnson in the receiving game when the Browns were giving him opportunities at those years. Like, and Duke's always been an underrated runner. Like, I don't know what it is about Duke Johnson, but it just seems like teams just hate to, give him the chance to be the guy. Or even continue to be, like, their main complimentary guy. Like, I don't get it. But Houston is going to pay, like, over $12 million this year on running backs. And 2 of the 3 are definitely past their best. I really don't know what Philip Lindsay was doing here. Like, I can't imagine there wasn't some other team who was offering him that kind of money with less. But then again, Lindsay probably might not see Mark Ingram as competition at this point. If I was a young athletic guy or a young talented running back who has the top speed that Lindsay does, like the breakaway potential, I wouldn't see him as a threat. And honestly, I could see how he could believe that he could beat out David Johnson at this point. Because since Philip Lindsay has entered the league, he has been a better running back than David Johnson. So, and then the Texans, and I mean, it's a cheap deal, like, but they signed Dante Moncrief to a contract. Like, I understand letting Will Fuller walk, but then you sign Moncrief. It's like, oh, we're going to let this guy. It's like, yeah, he's really talented, but he's, he misses too many games because of injuries and stuff. So we're going to sign a guy who misses almost every game because he's injured. I don't get it. I honestly don't understand how Dante Moncrief's staying around. Well, I mean, he's incredibly physically gifted, or he has been in the past, but he's always hurt. He's always hurt. Which, if I remember correctly, the Dolphins signed Will Fuller to like a 1-year deal. I think it was like 1 year, $8 million, 8.5, something like that. So and if that's correct, then that probably means Miami's not drafting a receiver, or maybe they do. But you've got Fuller and Parker there, and if Preston Williams is healthy, he's there. When he's been healthy, he's been very productive. But it seems like they could use a slot, like a really good slot receiver. I mean, maybe you think that Fuller could do that, or maybe Preston Williams could be like a big physical slot guy. I mean, Fuller has played in the slot some for Houston in the past, but... Or maybe you think that it's more likely that they're going to use like Gesicki as a, tight end slot a lot of the times. But I don't know. What it probably means is that the Dolphins aren't drafting a receiver with their first pick in the first round, and maybe not in the first round period now. Although, Devontae Parker's deal, I'm trying to remember, is he in year 2 of his extension? I'm trying to remember which year he is on that extension that he's on. But Williams was an undrafted free agent, so this should be the last year of his deal. If Fuller's on a 1-year deal, then you do need to be preparing for the future. So it doesn't preclude them from drafting a wideout, but I don't know when they would draft one now. Whereas I thought it seemed pretty likely they were going to draft a receiver with one of their first round picks. So, or heck, they just decide to just swing for it, and they also use like their first pick, and they draft like Jamar Chase or Devontae Smith, and just say, yeah, we're just going all out on weapons. We're going to make sure Tua has a Death Star to work with. Although I would say it probably would be more pertinent to, say, draft Penei Sewell and make sure you've got tackles. Because what I would do is I would draft him, and I would decide whether he or Austin Jackson are going to play, which tackle positions those two are going to play. Which, with Tua being a lefty, I think it actually would make a lot more sense, or it would make sense to draft Sewell and put him at right tackle as the blindside protector for Tua. And Sewell, actually, I think, or Sewell played, I think, right tackle his freshman year, and then sophomore year transitioned to left. But Sewell has played both right and left tackle in his career, not just in college but in high school. And that allows you to move Robert Hunt inside to guard, which improves your guard position and is a better spot, I think, for Hunt long term. He's a little slow-footed. I love him in the run game, though. Robert Hunt is a nasty run blocker. He's one of my favorite prospects of the 2020 draft. So, I say you take Penei Sewell at 3, and then at 18, you take I guess it depends on what you think your team needs most at receiver moving forward. Especially based on contracts, maybe it could be any type of receiver. Although I really would lean strongly towards maybe a more slot type receiver, in which case like a Kadarius Toney, Rondale Moore, or an Elijah Moore who can also play on the outside. Like both Rondale and Elijah Moore can absolutely play outside. Although maybe you think that's a little high for all of those guys. I know there's been a lot of people who have like Toney going to the Redskins at 19, so they're like, no, it's not high for Toney. But the other guys, I'm like, I actually think that both of those guys have more upside than Toney because they've played more on the outside in their careers. Rondale Moore is just, he's a more dynamic athlete than Toney, like all around. Elijah Moore as well, and they're both better downfield receivers, and both are better on contested catches than Kadarius Toney. So, but I really like those guys. Or you get like it's like Rashad Bateman will be in that range, Terrace Marshall will be in that range. So, but out of the receivers, those would be my 6 first round. Well, 6. I've got 7 guys that I would consider as, this guy goes in the first round. Yeah, I'm cool with it. You've got the top 3. You've got Smith, Chase, Waddle, and then you've got Terrace Marshall. You have Rashad Bateman. You have Toney. You have Rondale and Elijah Moore. Which I guess that actually gives me 8. Right? That's 8 first round. Of course, those guys I'm thinking back half of the first round. But there are arguments where I could see someone for Terrace Marshall, I can see him slowly creeping up the board because of his size, his speed, and his tape. He's got really good tape. So, but anyway, but I actually think this is a really good draft at a number of the most important positions. Obviously every position's important, but this is a deep corner class. In terms of I think there's a lot of second, third round guys that have a lot of upside. There are a number of there's a number of guys you could consider athletic freaks in a lot of ways in this class. You have Eric Stokes of Georgia, who's like, I think he's like 6'1", but I think he's closer to like 6 foot, maybe 6 foot and a half an inch. But he ran like a 4.26 40. And I was like, he was fast on tape. I didn't realize he was that fast. Then you've got like his teammate Tyson Campbell, who ran, he was a slow guy with a 4.38 40. He ran a 4.38 40 at like close. I think Campbell's close to 6'3" as a corner. And Campbell has more wiggle than Stokes, even though he's taller. He's got a little more shiftiness. So you've got some different stylistic difference there, or you've got some difference in like style between the two. There, but like both are ridiculously athletic. And you have some guys who are like borderline first rounders. Some have UCF corner. His name's Aaron Robinson. He looks like a top end slot corner to me. So I don't know if I'd take him in the first. But he seems like late first to like second round guy. You've got Asante Samuel Jr., who actually I think probably will make it as an outside corner too, but he looks like he could be an elite slot corner. And he's built basically exactly like his dad. And his dad is one of the best corners in NFL history, Asante Samuel Sr. If I'm not mistaken, he has the most interceptions of anyone who's played in my lifetime. It's like him or Charles Woodson. I think they're like the top two. But like Asante Samuel is one of the best corners, period, of anyone who's been alive for the last 30 years. And the fact he is not a Hall of Famer right now is a little bit of a shock to me. Because that guy I get that interceptions aren't everything, but oh my gosh, when you rack up as many as he's racked up over his career, and as many pick sixes, game-changing talent. Not, like he's a guy who decided games with his ability to play the cornerback position. Like, there are only a handful of corners in the league at any one time who legitimately like change the face of football games on a regular basis. That was Asante Samuel Sr. And his son has a lot of him in it. I'm not saying Asante Samuel Jr. is going to be his dad, but I'm really high on him, and I would draft him in the first round. I have surefire first round grades on 5 corners. That's Patrick Surtain. That's Caleb Farley, who is a physical freak, too. Greg Newsome out of Northwestern, who ran a 4.38 40 or a 4.36 40, and he's 6'1". Really like him. Northwestern's defense was awesome. He's one of the reasons that Justin Fields looked so bad against Northwestern's defense. Newsome locked Olave up. J.C. Horn out of South Carolina, love his tape. His dad was a, multiple-time Pro Bowl receiver with the Saints and Falcons in the NFL, and his son is a great cornerback prospect. Really long, really physical. I love his tape. And then my 5th one is Asante Samuel Jr. Those guys are surefire, should be first-round guys, in my opinion. And I think the first 4 guys will. Although some people have Newsome as a second-rounder. I see some people with him in the first. I know me and Marcus Whitman, that franchise guy here on YouTube, we both have him or we both have Asante Samuel as first round corner or in our first round grades, but a lot of people aren't quite that high on Asante Samuel Jr., but they should be. So, anyway, I think I've gone on for long enough today. I appreciate everyone for tuning in. Sorry that I started a little late today. Like I said earlier in the show, I was having some issues with getting my camera to work, and I've found that it was very simple to, get it working. I'm a newbie, guys. I'm a newbie. So, anyway, I appreciate y'all tuning in. Hope y'all have a great rest of your day. I will be back tomorrow at 2 o'clock. Although, this week's going to be interesting, so this is some other stuff that's going on. So my sister is getting married on Saturday, which means I don't know what else going on this week, so my schedule could be all over the place for streaming. And there's something else I've got going on Thursday. So I'm also a musician, and I've been a singer. I sing and I play drums, and I've got some projects that I'm a part of, and one of those might conflict with my schedule Thursday. So if I end up streaming Thursday, it will either be earlier in the day, which is very unlikely, or I'll push my stream to later in the evening. That's a possibility on Thursday. But that just depends on what all is going on, because things might work out and I might not end up streaming Thursday. But after Saturday, I shouldn't have too much stuff conflicting unless something else comes up. But I don't know what else is going to pop up this week. So, anyway, with that being said, thank y'all for tuning in. This has been Blind Eye Live. If you missed any of the show and want to see my thoughts in the first hour on March Madness and some other stuff, feel free to check out the archive. This will go up on the channel later. Once it, I'm trying to remember the term for what it does, but anyway, this will automatically save to the channel. You'll be able to watch it. So